Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, with that, then I'm going to introduce our guest speaker and then let him get going here. So I just want to read something real quick about him. Jim Doyle has been praised as an expert on hope, whose own life is a living testimony to the guidance he gives as an author, executive coach, and facilitator of high impact learning. Coach Pat Riley has said that of Jim's expertise as a developer of human potential and organizational culture, Jim Doyle teaches the fundamentals of how to achieve a winning team. Like any who serve, Jim is driven by purpose. His purpose is to help others be their best selves when they need it most. So we're going to have Jim Doyle here talk now about how hope and resilience fosters well-being. Jim, thanks for coming, and the floor is yours.
My pleasure. I think I'm going to get a chance to screen share here. So let me get my screen up. And I guess I'm off camera, so you guys can't really see me, but that's okay. You can kind of guesstimate what I kind of look like. You saw my picture, I think, on the website. Thanks to Becky Amble for coordinating my appearance here tonight. Becky and I have been friends and colleagues for a while, as well as John Swaney. I'm really looking forward to this. I have a real appreciation and allegiance to our veterans. I wasn't in the service, but my younger brother during the Vietnam War served on both the USS Midway and Coral Sea. And I have two nephews, his sons, who just got out of the Navy after their service. And their combination of ships were the USS Lake Erie, the USS Ronald Reagan, and the USS Bunker Hill. I have tremendous admiration for everybody on the call and your service, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. And I know that everybody has a sense of wanting to give back as well. And so I hope we can have some fun tonight. The title of the talk is How Hope and Resilience Foster Well-Being. I'm willing to connect with anybody via LinkedIn, and my book website is www.hopeforlifebook.com. If you go and snoop around a little bit on that, you'll get a little bit of a sense of who I am and a further understanding of my background. So I think we'll just get into the talk, and we'll make it very interactive. I've structured it too that at the end I have kind of a little self-assessment that I'm going to ask you to do, and it's not a test. It's up to you. You can jump in and do as much or as little with it as you want, given time. If we use chat too and we go along, anybody that has questions, I'll kind of pay attention to chat. But if somebody has something that they would like to raise a question on and have the group talk about it, that would be fantastic. And so that's kind of the process that we'll go through, and I think it's going to be I think a fun night. I'm going to do something too that I typically don't do. I'm going to read a very short passage from my book Hope for Life, and I think when I read it, you'll get a better understanding as to why I'm doing it. And I think that will be kind of fun. And then we'll go through and make this as interactive as we possibly can. I can't think of an audience that probably if you were in combat, and if not, I'm sure you found times as well where fostering even a little glimpse of hope gives life and birth to a sense of resilience, some sense of joy, and ultimately kind of a sense of well-being. And that's really the purpose tonight. And I think we're going to have some fun with this. And I hope that everybody finds some nugget that you can take away, and from an applicability, practicality standpoint, have some fun with it. So let me start. And again, you can pull up, you can go to Amazon.com and get a glimpse of the book. But let me just read this first passage. The title of the book is Hope for Life, Being Your Best Self When You Need It Most. And so let me just start with this. So this is chapter 1. The title of the chapter is What's a Life Vision and How Can It Affect Life? And this particular chapter heading, I think, is very apropos for this group. It's titled Wisdom from a Wounded Warrior. True story, as most of the stories in the book, well, all the stories in the book are true. I embellished a little bit, but that's a little bit of writer's author liberty. So here we go. It was a picture postcard day. This was the kind of day for being grateful. This was the kind of day for being hopeful. But I was not in a grateful or hopeful mood. I settled in for another day at the state-sponsored workforce center. I was going on 6 months with no income after my job had been eliminated. I was starting to feel sorry for myself. Squinting at my email without my reading glasses, I could make out a rejection notice from some automated system. What a way to kick off my day, I said to myself. Knowing I had to walk back to my car and retrieve my reading glasses, I groped for my keys in my bag. I mumbled a foul 4-letter word. Often I had been blaming St. Jude, the patron saint of difficulty and things despaired of, for not answering my prayers. And as I now felt more rejection, a pity party was raging in my mind. I was angry, grumbling, stuck in woe is me thinking. Head down, I marched through the lobby. The door opened for me, held by a man who looked like an NFL pro defensive back. He greeted me with, "Good morning, sir. Looks like you could use a hand." "Thanks," I responded. "How are you doing?" "Great, great," he said. I was stunned. The man stood there smiling with an artificial leg and foot. I fumbled with my question. "What happened to you?" "I was on duty in the Persian Gulf War," he said. Very humbled, I thanked him for his service, and we talked some more, and I learned his name was Tyrone. "How do you keep going every day?" I asked. "I don't look at the negative," he said. "My struggles, like not having a job, are just temporary. Instead, I praise God for what I have." He looked up to the sky as if he had returned an interception for a touchdown. He raised his forefinger, pointing to heaven. "You can't be negative about life," he added. This impromptu meeting with Tyrone transformed my attitude. This was true wisdom from a wounded warrior. Tyrone could have been angry. Instead, he lived with gratitude. His presence was inspiring. Though we were both out of work, he was filled with hope while I was full of despair. His future was bright while mine was unsure. We had very different life visions. We shook hands and walked in opposite directions. Standing behind my car, I looked up at the brilliant clear blue sky and I shouted, "I got your message." Walking back inside, gratitude consumed me. I felt transformed as I sat in my chair at the workstation. So I share that story with you because just 2 days ago, I did a webinar in the manufacturing space for frontline supervisors. And it was interesting. I asked in kind of the warm-up for everybody to introduce themselves. And this particular program, we were talking about behavioral leadership style. And I said, as a way to introduce yourself, what would be a phrase, a set of words that you would use to describe who you are? And this woman opened up the conversation. I called on her first. We'll say her name was Becky. We've got Becky Amble here with us. So this is also a Becky. And Becky was a frontline supervisor in manufacturing, and her company made med devices. And she said, "I think of myself as a light in the room." And there was just silence on the rest of the call. And I give people the opportunity to put themselves on camera or not. And I had it on speaker view, so I could see a couple of people's faces. And just by the look in their eye, I could tell that there was something they were thinking about. Becky went on to say, being a light in the room means that I'm really there to help people. There's part of me that just wants to do good and to see other people succeed. Well, I was really stunned by that and very impacted with it, but it fit with the description in the passage I just read to you about Tyrone. As we continued with the introductions, I finally came to another fellow who was an engineer. And he said, and he kind of chuckled, he said, "Well, I can't really say I'm the light in a room. I'm an engineer, and everybody kind of laughed. And anybody on the call who is an engineer and or is married to one, has a relationship with a significant other, you know what I mean. They're kind of a special breed, if you would. They think a certain way and all kinds of interesting stuff. But this fellow went on to say, but I do think of myself as a teacher. There's part of me that, like the person who sees themselves as light in the room, sees an opportunity to help people grow and develop and be better. And so again, in prep for our talk tonight, I thought I'd share that with you as an opening to say, we're going to be talking about building the discipline of a mindset. And boy, I don't have to tell anybody on the call, having served our country and in whatever branch of the service you were in, having a disciplined mindset was something that helped you get through your tour of duty and the time that you were involved in the military. So that's not new news to you. But like an elite athlete, it requires a certain set of skills and thinking. In fact, I'm going to go on record and I'm going to make a big, hairy, audacious statement. I don't know Michael Gale, but we're starting to build a little bit of a relationship. We do similar kinds of work. I'm all in for building up your body and working on skills and development. But I've come to believe that true strength comes from the inside a person, their mindset, the alignment of their body, mind, and spirit. And that produces energy to have strength on the outside. And if you don't believe me, and you perhaps have seen this in your service, as you learned various skills, did you ever notice an individual slight in stature who was able to kick, a fairly large physical individual? And the difference had nothing to do with physical strength. It had all to do with mental strength. And we know that mental wellness and mental health is a #1 issue in our country today. And so one of the invitations I'm going to have for everybody on the call tonight, thinking about this topic, is we all today have to be the primary caregiver for our well-being. No one else can do that for us. And this is something we can't assign to someone else. If you were in a command position, you can give somebody else orders and expect that they're going to follow through. In life now, civilian life, you got to give yourself orders. And the orders of the day are take control of your resilience, your mindset, and your well-being. So that's the journey we're on. Now, to get us started today, let me just make sure I got this going right. We're going to talk about a mindset of possibility, being your best self. And as you showed up tonight in this wonderful Minnesota weather, but you're sitting at home in front of your computer on Zoom, your past history is your story till now. I had a chance to meet Alan briefly before we started, and I know listening to him, he's doing career coaching. Everybody is who you are up to this moment. That's the story. But the story we're going to talk about tonight is really what's next and what's possible for you. What's next and what's possible for you. Now, you can't see it, but if you go online and you look at the book cover, I was really blessed that Rocky Bleier, Purple Heart and Bronze Star recipient and 4-time Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers, endorsed the book. And on the front cover, he wrote, by giving us an understanding of who he is, Jim Doyle helps us reflect on our own lives and come to terms with our own stories. Now, sometimes I get dinged in workshops because I use sports metaphors, and I'll take a little bit of a liberty here. I hope it doesn't cloud your evaluation of the overall talk tonight. But if you want to watch a very moving story, and perhaps you've seen it, Rocky Bleier, 50 years after being in Vietnam, and his story is a very powerful one. I won't spoil it for you, but he felt compelled to go back to Vietnam and to revisit the exact battleground where he was injured, where he won the Purple Heart by saving people in his platoon. And he had a very moving experience with that. And the message I want to leave tonight with everybody is that we truly are, and you might think this is cheesy and it sounds trite, but coming from an author, we are the authors of our own history. And that question of what's next, what's possible, has just a tremendous amount of potential and power to it. And a quote that I'm kind of excited to think about, and it's new for me because I just recently watched the making of Motown. Mary Wilson, who passed away last year, but was active in the filming of the Showtime film, said on camera as she reflected on the career with the Supremes and all of the people that came through Motown records, it's not where you are, it's not where you're from, but where you're going that counts. And so if you're working with Alan and you're going through career transition and coaching, this is just a wonderful thing to kind of put your hands around and your mind around and begin to build a new set of aspirations and hopes and dreams, not grounded in where you were, where you come from. Not that past experience isn't important, because it is. It helps shape who we are, our story up till today. But as Rocky Bleier said, it helps us understand and come to grips with where we are today. And if we want to invent ourselves for tomorrow, that's our future. And we can start doing that today. And so that's what the talk is going to be really about tonight. And as you get to know me and my story, you'll have a better understanding about why hope and resilience is so powerful as a builder of possibility, and this mindset of strength from the inside producing strength on the outside. So here we go. Here's a copy of the book. Well, here's a copy of the book cover. I read my own book almost on a daily basis. I hope you don't think that's narcissistic, but I get ideas out of it that help me kindle hope and keep me going. And I realize for some people, and my guess is of the 20-some people on the call tonight, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple of people that hope means getting out of bed and putting one foot in front of the other and just making it through the day. And so for some of us, surviving life is a big deal. And for others of us, we're on this path to really thrive in life. And that's the aspirational goal that we can all have. So here goes our journey. I'm pretty excited about the George Wellness Center, our own downtown Minneapolis. They've rebranded themselves as the YMCA of the North. But I think when we think about a mindset definition, I'm going to invite you to consider this. And by the way, this whole evening is an invitation extended from me to you. It's not a declaration of this is what you should do, this is how you do it. If you want to be successful in life, this is what you have to do. That's not who Jim is. I'm going to suggest, and hopefully everybody on the call is enjoying good health, but health is the state of being free from physical illness or injury. I've got a couple of knee replacements, and so I can't run anymore, but I like to walk. I think you're lucky in life if you have good health. And look at that second bullet there, the definition of wellness. Wellness is the state of being in good physical health. And it is a blessing when we have that. You can't buy it. There's no true value on it from hey, I want to go out and purchase this. You can't. It is a state of being, a mental state. And look at the third one, the thing we're going to focus on tonight, well-being. I just love this. It's the state of practicing one's full potential for the capacity of life, that alignment, if you would, of mind, body, spirit. And the why expands that into community and environment. And certainly the Eagle Veteran Minnesota group is a community, and there's tremendous benefit in being part of that community. And so I think there's a real opportunity here for all of us to kind of be co-coaches to one another in the spirit of community. But I'll ask you just to kind of keep this well-being idea kind of in mind as we think about how hope and resilience foster that, and where that kind of comes from. And I hope I can share some very practical, applicable ideas about that as we keep moving along. Okay, so let's keep going. The invitation as an outcome I have for everybody is, if you're not already doing it, again, evolving into this primary caregiver for your own well-being. But it's really an invitation to foster a mindset of possibility, optimism, hope, resilience, and well-being. I often get asked, well, Jim, what's the difference between false hope and true hope? I think we all have hope, but sometimes some of us put more action behind that hope. And I think that's the difference between just wishful thinking, and actually putting some action behind what we do. I'm a big believer in the saying of, have faith in what you hope for, certain about what's unseen. And that's said a little differently in different ways, but that's a driving force for me. There's this sense about faith, hope, spirit. It's interesting. I'm watching a show on Netflix called, I think it's called Full Swing. And there was an interview with Tiger Woods, and there's plenty of women golfers that fit the same bill, but this one I think is an interesting one. When I think sometimes about faith, and people often say, well, Jim, in corporate America, you can't really talk about faith. And I say, I understand that. So a way to think about faith outside of spirituality, everybody, and I don't want to offend anybody here, so but I'll just share this with you, is when Tiger Woods was asked after the accident, he was asked in the press conference, do you think you can win the Masters? And without batting an eyelash, everybody, he said very matter-of-factly and looked right into the audience's eye and said, yes, I can. And I think when I think about faith, one form of that is that kind of spirit that we all have on the inside. And back to my example of those two people who introduced themselves, I think they both exemplified playing big in life, not playing small. All of us are meant to shine in life. None of us are meant to shrink in the moment when life offers up challenges. As human beings, we have free will, and we get to choose moment to moment how we show up. So again, the invitation I have for everybody is to begin, if you already aren't doing it, truly fostering this mindset, this disciplined thinking of possibility, optimism, hope, resilience, and well-being. So we'll keep moving along here. The road of life is full of detours, closures, uneven surfaces, unexpected twists and turns. I think we can all kind of admit to that. And I think the real challenge for all of us, everybody, is how do we keep our eyes on the road ahead and not be distracted by what's behind? Yet we know when you get behind the wheel of an automobile, one of the first things you often do will be to adjust the rearview mirror. Now, maybe a little bit like me, you have family, friends, good friends, colleagues, who, and perhaps even people that were in the service with you, who are trying to live today through their rearview mirror. The pandemic changed everything. Excuse me. And I still hear in seminars, oftentimes people say, gosh, I really wish I could get back to the way it was. I was in a workshop not too long ago, and the speaker I thought had a great topic or a great suggestion. He said, and you maybe have heard this before, there's not really a new normal out there. There is a new reality. And some people, just for whatever reason, aren't willing to embrace that. And so they drive down the road of life. You can't see me driving a car, but imagine my hands are on the wheel. You can pretend it as well. And instead of looking forward and occasionally glancing into the rearview mirror and avoiding distractions, they're spending a lot of their time wishing for the past, hoping that things can return to the way they were. And I think everybody on the call knows that that's not the way of the future. And in fact, excuse me, we need both. We need to be looking ahead and noticing what's behind, but not allowing ourselves to get distracted by what's behind. I'm going to take a sip of water. I shared with Becky that for 2 years, I did everything I could to avoid COVID. And wouldn't you know, a couple of weeks ago, I got it from my 9-month-old granddaughter. She was new to daycare, and almost the third day she was there, she picked up a bug. My wife and I both picked up her. And guess what? We both at the same time tested positive for COVID. And one of the side effects is coming out of this thing. I'm basically clean now, but I've got a little bit of a tickle and a little bit of a cough, and it's kind of annoying. So it's a sobering experience when suddenly you're driving down the road of life, one of those detours. You've done everything you can, fully vaccinated, all the precautions, wash my hands like a crazy person, carry my own little jar of antiseptic, hand wash in I can't find the right word. Sorry about that. And, you think you do everything right. And then boom, all of a sudden, nope, something happened. So truth is we need both, everybody. So let me start with a story. I love this story. And I am basically a storyteller. I think we learn really well by stories. And a lot of companies today are trying to pass down their values and their principles and their core beliefs through stories. So I was really blessed during the holidays to give a talk to a wonderful organization that provides services for parents who've lost children. And my topic was finding hope during the holidays. And boy, for the longest period of time, after meeting with the leaders in the organization and thinking about, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? How am I going to offer these people comfort and compassion? Many of the parents, not all of them, were affected by stillborns, but many of the, parents as well had a child that lived anywhere from 1 day to 10 years. And all of a sudden something happens and they're gone. I happen to be a parent who lost a child. And so I had a real open heart, if you would, for these guys. So this is a true story. And I live out in the Minnetonka area, and I've got several different walking paths. Remember, I told you about my knee replacement, so I can't run. And in this particular area, I walked pretty religiously, and it was early December. Unlike what we're getting now, it was the blessing was we hadn't had a lot of snow. It was cool, but not a lot of snow. So I walked by these stairs, dug into this hill probably 24 times. And I don't know if you ever had that moment where something happens and this intuitive sense says to you to do something. And in my case, everybody, the intuitive sense was go up those stairs. And so here's a picture of the path up the stairs. Here's a view from the top of the hill, kind of a plateau that overlooks this whole area looking back down. And remember, what I'm thinking about and practicing talking about on my walk to myself is, what am I going to say to these people, parents, family, siblings, to offer some comfort and compassion? So I get to the top of the hill, I'm looking around, and this is what I found. And I paused for a moment because I wanted that to kind of sink in for you as it maybe did, well, as it did do for me. Sitting on a bench is this beautiful painted stone. And this is it, a picture of it. And it says, spread joy. And I was just overcome with emotion. I picked the stone up, took my gloves off, and just sat quietly on a bench, holding that stone in my hands. And I thought, oh my gosh, what are the chances? Here is my answer about what I can say to these people. And a big part of me, and I don't know how you feel about this, I hope you think not less of me for sharing this with you in the spirit of being fully transparent. There was a big part of me that wanted to keep this stone, to put it in my pocket, to just have it almost like a genie rubbing a lantern, to bring up good vibes when I really felt crappy. And I just thought that would be tremendous. But you know what? I realized in the moment that the creator of this stone, like our creator of who we are, didn't intend for a person like Jim to come along, find this, and take it home and hoard it for myself. I'm sure that the creator of the stone didn't think that. I'm sure they thought, I'm going to paint this as a message for other people to find at the holidays, and perhaps they would spread that joy to other people. So I held the stone one more time and put it back on the bench. Don't know what happened to it, but my guess is someone else might have come along and didn't have the realization perhaps that I did, and they picked it up. But what's great about this story is that all of us are meant in life to be special, to do something significant, to make a difference. Now, we maybe don't know what that is, but this is what I realized in the moment, that this painted stone wasn't just for me, but it was really to share with other people. And I've been doing this now during the holidays and beyond. And I would invite you to, think about yourself and the contribution that you can make to other people, be it your family, your spouse, as a grandpa, as a grandma, at work. We're all meant in life, just as the creator of the stone did, to put a message out there in our own unique way, like the engineer who said, I'm not the light in a room, but I like to teach. And then you had the other person who said, hey, I am the light in the room, and I want to spread joy. My words, not hers. And if you don't believe me on this, take a chat at this mindset. Everybody remembers Martin Luther King. We just had his celebration day, a few weeks ago. It's Black History Month. Do you remember, or did you know that one of the great lines out of the I Have a Dream speech was, out of the mountain of despair, a stone of hope. And I discovered this in a short period of time after I found that painted stone. And boy, this is another one of those important messages that you receive at times when we're open to receiving them, that they're kind of like a time capsule. I sit back and I think about that, and I think about all the crapola that I've gone through in life. And here I find a stone of hope. Maybe you've had that experience as well. By the way, as we're going along, I'm going to check chat out here. If anybody has something. Oh, somebody just said, I know exactly where those stairs are. I walk past them all the time. See you in the park, Jim. I love those little stones that people leave in that park. That is really, really cool. Thank you. What a great gift that is. That's fantastic. Yeah, and when we're open to these little unexpected moments of hope, it's amazing what it does for us. But let's keep going here. So in the book, I created something that I call the Life Choice Matrix. And I hope everybody finds some practical, high take-home value in this. So as I was writing the book, I was hearing all these stories from people about they were being extraordinary in life by just kind of doing ordinary acts of kindness and demonstration of hope and lighting and keeping that internal flame kind of going. And I came to the conclusion, everybody, that we all as man have free choice and free will. We say sometimes when we're short on food at home, we have a saying in our family, FHB, it's family hold back. And that message is that I've got 5 boys that they can't, when they were younger, eat like it's a feeding frenzy when their cousins and family and stuff is over. Maybe you do something like that in your family as well. So we all can choose from moment to moment. Am I feeling hopeful? Am I feeling hopeless? When I'm feeling hopeful in life, I can go along and face adversity, and I can give in the moment. Doesn't mean that I give up. I give in and I accept what's in front of me, which fuels my inner energy to be able to go forward. And sometimes in America, we love to think that it's always go forward, but sometimes we've got to go backward to go forward. Sometimes we've got to go sideways to go forward. Sometimes we've got to go around. Sometimes we've got to go under. And what's really powerful, everybody, is that we can think about this for ourselves and with others. That's really, really cool. And when we're operating like this, I really have come to believe that our mindset, we're intentional. We're our primary caregiver, everybody, and we're attending to our well-being. We're thinking about that George Wellness Center definition, that sense of practicing all of who we are to align mind, body, and spirit. We're really paying attention to happiness. And we are doing all the things we can do, not to buy happiness at one time, like our favorite cup of coffee with a Danish that gives us a temporary high, but to really do things like work out and small gifts of kindness and do things that allow our brain to chemically get all the good chemicals dumped into our system. And that neuroscience tells us that gives us lasting happiness. That causes us to be resilient. That causes us to be optimistic. And by the way, optimism is something that can be learned, and we can be very hopeful. Here's the metaphor I would use. Think about yourself as a ship on the turbulent seas, if you would. Not necessarily whitewater rafting, because I don't know that wind necessarily comes into play here, but a sailboat. We can learn to be wind in our own sails through our own self-talk, our own self-motivation, our own personal beliefs about the world and the way we're operating. And that allows us, everybody, to do something that's also kind of become overused, I think, but that idea of pivoting in life, of facing adversity. And in basketball, I think is the definition I'd like to use. A basketball player learns to pivot to either make a move, to score points, to pass, to get around the defender. And what's interesting is, everybody, and I helped Pam Borton, the former coach of Gopher basketball, women basketball, write her new book called The Crooked Rim. I asked Pam right over the holidays, I probably know the answer to this question, Pam, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And please don't be offended by it. But can you play basketball? Can a player play for you if they can't pivot? And she said, absolutely not. And so if we think about that in life, we're not going to be successful in life, everybody, if we don't learn to pivot, if we don't learn to be hopeful, if we don't kind of accept this idea that we can shape our thinking, our mindset. We gain strength on the inside, which allows us to have strength on the outside. Now, let's compare and contrast that with feeling hopeless. And the metaphor here that I'm going to use is an anchor. And what can end up happening, instead of having wind in our sails, we go through life with an anchor. And boy, it's no fun to be dragging an anchor along in life, to be living a life that's discouraged, and we're fearful, and we're uncertain, and we're resentful, and we've got self-doubt. And if we don't take care and be a primary caregiver for our own well-being, what happens is all of that negativity, that anchor, suddenly causes us to give up in life, and we throw in the proverbial towel. And my fear for people that operate like this is they get stuck, and then they end up staying stuck. both for themselves, but they can be that way with others. And perhaps you might know someone in life that's basically operating with kind of an anchor mentality. And I'm going to invite everybody tonight to say, wow, maybe there is a different way of thinking. Now, this isn't just la 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 talk, because we all can choose every day, every moment to be hopeful. And I'm not talking about wishful thinking, false hope here. Realistic belief, that sense of possibility, that sense of, I don't know for sure what's up around the corner, but I just have this belief, this spirit that there's something good there. And that spurns me on. Again, not false hope, not wishful thinking, not daydreaming, because you got to put action behind your thinking. But there's a big difference between operating on a daily moment-to-moment basis, feeling hopeful, being a possibility thinker, as the late Reverend Robert Schuller would say, or feeling hopeless, where I truly give in, give up, and just kind of don't accept things the way they are. And that's fine. I'm not saying you've got to agree with life circumstances, but we can accept them for where they are and move on. So I'll just let that kind of sink in for just a second. And again, if anybody has any chat questions, thoughts on that, you certainly can send those in. Okay. Additionally, then I thought, well, I got feedback from people of, hey, Jim, you better give people some practicality, some how-to about this idea of the life choice matrix. And so I came up with this idea, this acronym of LIVE. And let me take you through this. We can have some fun with this. The L is let go with faith. Now, again, I don't want to offend anybody. So think about faith. If you're not comfortable with spirituality, it's faith, this deep belief in what you hope for. And you just have this sense of, without knowing for sure the future, something good's going to happen. I just have this sense that I'm on the right path. And that then fuels the ability to be Tiger Woods-like, that when asked a question, hey, do you think you can win? You don't have to think about it. It's, yeah, I can. I just have this sense, this electricity on the inside. So that's the L. Now, in seminars and workshops with people, and perhaps you feel this way, and Alan, feel free to disagree with me, because remember, that's part of the take what fits and leave behind what doesn't. I think a lot of people in life and career transition get stuck because they're uncomfortable letting go with stuff. And there's a whole range of things that we have to let go of. In management seminars, in manufacturing, as people progress in their career, one of the reasons people have difficult times is that they try to do yesterday's job, or they try to do today's job with yesterday's skills. So they've got to a certain point in life, they're technically competent, their skill set's been developed, but they're trying to do today's work with yesterday's thinking. That doesn't work very well. We've all got to be thinking about, okay, maybe what got me to where I am today may not get me to where I want to go tomorrow. And so I would just invite everybody to kind of think about that. Let me check out chat too. Yeah, here, Alan, beautiful. People often need to let go of how job search should work, i.e. applying online. Absolutely. Absolutely. But you guys would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't, how sometimes people get stuck on this. They kind of look at me with deer in the headlights when I talk about needing to let go. Whether you're a seasoned, savvy veteran, you've been in the business 15, 20 years, or you're a new person and you're just coming out of an experience, like maybe being a vet, and you don't have the command and control mechanism in the civilian life that you had in the military. Just a little example there. Here's the next one. Be inspired for self and by others. I shared this story with Tyrone. I was truly inspired that day. As a matter of fact, I felt horrible when I got out to the car, and I thought, how can he have that attitude, that inner spirit and I don't. And I'm one of the most positive people in the world. And what I learned was I needed to recapture, rekindle, reclaim my inner spirit. And so when we're open to it, we can be inspired for self and by others. I've done quite a bit of work and really admire Caring Bridge. And boy, there are some really inspirational stories on the Caring Bridge site and in my own family, following family members as they brave their health journey. Next, V, be vibrant with a vision for life. A great example of this, we're not all charismatic. We're not all like that individual I shared with you who really thinks of herself as being light in the room. Okay, but we all can be like that engineer type who said, hey, but I can be a teacher. I can light up the room in my own unique way. And I think the challenge for all of us, everybody, is to find those unique nuggets inside us that we can be vibrant, because we're all meant to shine in life. We just have to find it. Here's the last one that I think is really important: energy. Be focused on the positive. I don't know about you, but there's so much negativity out there today. I try to operate with what I call positive intent. Let me give you an example of that. Let's say that you have what you think is going to be a difficult conversation coming up with a spouse, a family member, a son, a daughter, maybe your boss, somebody that works for you, maybe a tough supplier, a tough customer. And in your mind, much like prehistoric man, remember, prehistoric man was confronted with, saber-toothed tigers, and they can run, they can fight, or they can freeze in place. And what's interesting about that is that we all have a choice. We all can choose to be a certain kind of a way with our energy, and we dictate where we're going to focus our attention, where we are going to really work hard and where we aren't going to work hard. And so focusing on the positive, none of us have faced saber-toothed tigers these days. They're all in our mind. But yet, if we don't pay attention to that, sometimes the stories we create in our mind aren't really true. And so we have to pay attention to our self-talk. Somebody once said in time management, you really can't manage time, but what we can learn to do is manage our energy. Where do we put our energy? So let me come up for air. Any questions, thoughts, chats anybody wants to share up to this point? Okay, let's keep going. So here's my little self-assessment. We're going to take just a few minutes to do this. I'm not going to ask anybody to share, but what I am going to ask you to do is to stay just a couple of minutes sitting in the privacy of your spot. I'll watch the clock. And just have you reflect and think about, the first one is, what am I hopeful about in life? What am I hopeful about in life? You don't have to write a book right now. You can just jot down a word or two. Maybe there's an image that comes to mind. Maybe there's a thought that you have. But what is it in life that you're hopeful about today? What are you hopeful about? And if you're struggling with this a little bit, that's okay. Sometimes it's easy to lose hope. We've got a chat. Looks like somebody somebody just put the Amazon Hope for Life book in there. Great, thank you. Okay, let's go to the next one. What am I grateful for? What am I grateful for? One of the great therapeutic exercises that therapists will do with children is, and maybe you've had some experience with this, is to create something called a grateful jar. and they'll ask children to take a piece of paper and write down the things that they're grateful for, that they've got gratitude around. Maybe it's grandma, it's grandpa, it's school, it's friends, it's whatever it may be. And you fill that jar up, and then periodically you can go back and pull those sheets of paper out of the jar, and you're thinking about what it is I'm grateful for. So take a minute and just reflect on, what am I grateful for today? Okay, here's the next question. What or who in life inspires you? What or who in life inspires you or me as you're answering that question? What or who inspire me? Here's the next one. How can I be more vibrant in life? How can I be more vibrant in life? And certainly, some of us are more introverted than others. And so we all can find a way to be that light in the room for people, however that might look. But how do I be more vibrant in life? One of my New Year's resolutions this year was to operate with more positive intent. And so in thinking about that difficult conversation, asking myself, how can I be more positive? What might this person be thinking about? Why might they be thinking that way? What might be causing them heartburn about meeting with me? And reframing, reshaping that conversation, everyone, help me feel, oh, okay, maybe there is a way that I can bring more positive vibes to this conversation. Okay, here's the last one in this hope and resilience self-assessment. Where do I get my energy? What trips my trigger? What gets me out of the bed in the morning to get going? And I realize sometimes all we can do is just survive in life. Thriving in life is sometimes a stretch. But where do I get energy? How do I get energy? What people or things do I like to do that causes me to get energy? Perhaps you might be struggling with these or thinking, wow, kind of interesting to be asking on a Wednesday night in the middle of a snowstorm. I had an executive recently say, Jim, I couldn't answer any of those questions. And then later he followed up and said, would love to have a conversation with you about helping me get through some of this. And I'll share a little bit about what's happening in my life. And again, this is not good or bad, not right or wrong. It's not what you should do. But by answering these things, by taking a little time out, by hitting the pause button, we get an opportunity to think about what's really important in life. And I've come to believe in working with people, all kinds of different people, all kinds of different walks of life, that the basis of these responses begin to create that inner strength, that sense of purpose, that sense of meaning, that sense of contribution that fuels hope, resilience, optimism, the discipline of a mindset, a confidence level that just oozes out of us. And those of you that are in transition, and I'm sure you've talked about this, the presence that you have, be it Zoom, be it live, the interviewer picks up on that, and they're looking for someone that brings energy and a positive sense. Again, any chat, any reactions, thoughts, anybody want to share anything as you did this little exercise?
I've got a question for you, Jim. This is Becky.
Yeah.
Not really having to do with this exercise, but I was thinking about this. Can a person be too positive so that they become delusional? And can we run the risk of trying to make everything positive and then not being realistic?
I mean, I think that can happen, Becky, but something I often, and I didn't mention it in the talk so far, it's that sense of authentic, ethical, from the heart. I think you can quickly, even people that are more introverted versus extroverted can pick up on duplicity with people that are more fake than real. I think when you are genuine, your actions and your behavior speak volume, and people will see those being in alignment. Does anybody else feel differently? Somebody talked about clear-eyed confident. I like that. Clear-eyed confident. I think, again, it's that alignment of body, mind, and spirit that creates this solidarity. And it's who we are on the inside shaping what we are on the outside. Okay, let's keep on trucking here. So here's what I want you to do. Take just another moment. And as we're thinking here on Wednesday night, snow is coming down. At this moment in your life, what's possible for you? Big question. That doesn't require a big answer tonight. I'm not looking for anybody having the answer. And you may be kind of dumbfounded by this and not even prepared to kind of think about it. Fine, no problem. I think it is worthwhile to consider moving forward as we think about, it's not so much where we came from, it's where we're going that's important. And what does the next part of life, the next chapter of life, the next part of the story for you look like? How does it feel? How does it sound? And if you think about that little assessment, what are all the elements to the next part of the story, that sense of possibility about what's possible? I think we got another chat. When we're hunkered down from the snowstorm, it's a great opportunity to be still and reflect. Absolutely. I've started a practice of intentional breathing each morning, and it's amazing what's happened. And given weather, COVID, a bunch of other stuff, I've gotten away from my morning workout at the Y. I need to get back into it. But the thing I didn't get away from is exactly what came in on chat, that sense of quietness, that sense of just breathing and intentionally thinking about doing nothing and letting go in the moment. So the goal here for everybody is to feel like I'm being my best self with hope, resilience, and well-being. Another little exercise you might do is to reflect on, when I am my best self, how does that look? How does it sound? How does it feel to me? And starting to try to write down, if you haven't before, some of those inner feelings about, when I'm at my best, what does that look like? And then spend a little time reflecting on, when I'm not at my best, what does that look like? And I'd be willing to bet that when we're not at our best, we've lost a sense of hope. we've lost a sense of resilience, and our well-being is drifting. We may not be paying enough attention to being that primary caregiver of body, mind, and spirit, and trying to figure out how those are in alignment together. And so my aspiration for everybody is that you found something in tonight's talk that maybe tripped your trigger to think more, reflect a little bit more, ask yourself some questions, think about, what does it really mean for me to be at my best, to really take care of my well-being, to really think about how I reclaim, rekindle hope, and how I protect it, guard against it, and not let it just slip into being false hope and wishful thinking. So I think I've come, it's about a 7-11. I'm going to be maybe a little bit earlier from the time, but I'm open to questions, chat. I'm not sure how the next part of the interaction between a speaker and the audience might work. Hopefully I've created a platform for you guys to kind of think. And so I'm real open to responding to chat and or, as Becky did, live questions from you about, I'm thinking about this. How does this sit with me in my current life situation?
There's a question for you in the Q&A.
Okay, I'll take a peek. Yeah, so I'll go back to the life choice matrix. It's the difference between giving in and giving up. So I think a lot of us are conditioned that sometimes the only alternative in life is to move forward. I think sometimes if I choose to remain hopeful in a particular situation, I don't have to agree with what's happening. Maybe I was just terminated from my job, and I've got a lot of issues around that: anger, resentment, shame, embarrassment. I'm not feeling very good about myself as a breadwinner. I've let my family down. All that self-talk, all that stuff is kind of going on in our mind. And it's easy to feel discouraged, fearful, uncertain, doubting, and resentful. If I give up and throw the towel in and let that mindset get the best of me, I can drift into a place of being stuck, as opposed to saying, okay, I don't agree with what the company did. I think they made a dumb decision. Maybe there's some things I could have done a little differently, but I can accept current reality for what it is. And I can summon up my inner strength to give in to what's happening. And from an Aikido perspective, which I spent a little time earlier in life, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to freeze in place and be a deer in headlights. I'm going to summon my inner courage. I'm going to foster hope and optimism and possibility. I'm not going to drift into the la-la land and pretend that I don't have issues. I do have some issues, but I'm not going to let it get the best of me. I'm going to move forward, or I'm going to move sideways. Or maybe there's some things I can do that will help me get around this obstacle without necessarily trying to bust straight through it. It'd be nice if I could land on my feet and just go get to the next job, and that would be kind of going forward. But maybe I choose to take a sideways step. All of that mentality is much, much different than if I throw the towel in, get a pity party going in my own head, start feeling sorry for myself, start blaming either me or other people for life situation. Hey, it is what it is. It's not that I agree with it, but I can accept it and I can move on. There's a different sense of being in this case. So hopefully that helps. Other questions, thoughts? Somebody thought Great example. Thank you. You know, look at the people in your lifetime who have been given bad news from a medical perspective. Their health isn't great. They're confronted with two things. I can fight in not fight positively, but fight that somehow this isn't real. It's not happening. I give up. I run away. I accept it and say, okay, this is where I'm at today. How do I get up the next day and put one foot in front of the next one and just move forward? And again, maybe sometimes surviving is all I can really do in the moment, but that becomes a win. And I'm putting wind in my sails by moving forward that way, rather than feeling so stuck that we've kind of dropped anchor, and boy, it's not good. Other thoughts and questions? I'm going to go back to Q&A here. How about anything else in chat? If a person gets in a, yeah, here's a good one. If a person gets in a pity party, are there 1, 2, 3 ideas to get out of that? Well, one of them, I think, begins with a look in the mirror, as I did with Tyrone. And it was wonderful that that happened. And I'm going to admit to you in full disclosure that I am a person that believes in this stuff. And so I looked at my chance meeting with Tyrone as a gift. And that was a wake-up call for me. I realized I was drifting into this getting stuck state. And in the moment in my life, Tyrone intervened and I had a wake-up call. So that's an example. I think it's holding ourselves as willing and able to accept, hey, my mindset isn't right now. I need to pause, take a step back, and really take a peek at what are the messages I'm giving myself? What is my self-talk like? Why am I telling myself that? These aren't real. These are imaginary. The reality is, hey, things are bad, but they're not that bad. There are some things I can do to start taking control over what I can control, and not letting myself drift into that state of mind where not only am I feeling sorry for myself, but I'm beginning to create negative stories about what's going to happen when they may not happen. I hope that helps. Other questions, thoughts, things you'd like to chat about? I know some people who seem to be permanently stuck in a negative mindset. What can be done? Well, the first thing is they have to help themselves first. Sometimes, a great example, my wife had a close friend who had cancer, and oftentimes she shared this story that she would get frustrated when people would try to fix her problem rather than just listen. So if you've got a friend that's kind of stuck, maybe just asking some questions and being a good listener and helping them work their way through their self-talk can be really, really helpful. Remember too, that people that are stuck and are kind of walking around with an anchor in life, what we have to do is help them recognize that, not as being wrong and destructive per se, but is it getting you to where you want to go? And most people would say, probably not. And I don't want anybody to try to be an amateur psychologist, but I think sometimes being a friend and listening and asking questions and being empathetic, and trying to help that person through that state to realize, ooh, okay, maybe your current thinking is not necessarily true, but you're acting on assumptions that we don't know if they're true or not. What if they go the other way? What if you were to meet someone that, I'm just ad-libbing now, but could introduce you to so-and-so, and that would lead to another conversation? And sometimes I think and Alan may say this too from a career coaching, sometimes productivity can be good things. More activity can be not just for the sake of activity, but rather than isolating and just, being alone, maybe it's out meeting with people. Either now it's live, but it could be on Zoom. It could be in a variety of different ways. I think it's recognizing where is that person and how do I help them help themselves. Other thoughts on any of the things we talked about? Okay. So to kind of move us along, and I'll turn it back over to the program host. I would just invite everybody again to consider the live model. Think about, are there some things in life that I might think about letting go with? Are there people, situations that can inspire me, and or can I inspire others? That's a great way to work your way out of a stuck position to feeling like I'm contributing and giving back. What are ways that I can be vibrant in life, that I can really shine? And then where am I putting my energy? What is it that I could be doing to help other people, to fuel my own inner strength? So again, everybody, the goal is to say, how can you be your best self with hope, resilience, and well-being? So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Anybody that wants to reach out, we can do it via LinkedIn, and Becky and I are pretty connected, and so you can talk to Becky too, and she can hook us up. So thank you. Maybe Mike, I'll turn it back to you.